What's going on, you guys? It's here with Nate28 and this is Crossbeats Productions. So in this particular video I want to show you guys on how to get your kick, more in essence about trap, but how to get your kick to really stand out in your trap beat, or just in general how to get your kick to stand out. Most of the techniques that I'm going to show you are pretty simple and straightforward to use. Some of the techniques obviously, by the way, don't mind that cricket that's in the background. I know in a previous video you guys have commented on this cricket, so the cricket's back, and the cricket's probably here to stay for at least this video until I tell them to get the heck out of here. But anyway, this video is more or less how to make your kick stand out. Now, there's some tools I guess you could probably use in Studio One. This isn't specific to Studio One, but I might do a follow-up video on how to do this in Studio One. But I'm just showing you tools that I use with my mixes and things like that to get my kick to stand out. The reason why I've got this spectral meter here is to show you how it's going to look on a spectral meter, so you can understand the concept behind it and understand why it works and things like that. So, man, I've got to shut that cricket up. Give me a second. No, it's not working. Anyway, so pretty much the man, that cricket is really going to annoy some people. I'll tell you what, I'm going to lose lose views because of you cricket. Anyway, so the basics behind this. So I'll show you this kick. I'll play the kick and I'll play it on its own, and I'll play it in concept of a track that I've got, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, and you can understand where this works. So let me just play the beat in concept of the whole thing, and then I'll just play the kick and I'll explain this process. Okay, so that's the beat. It's quite low volume just because I haven't put a whole limiter on it right now, but might turn that up in the video a bit. But anyway, so the kick, basically, let me just put a limiter on this so you guys can hear. I think that cricket's getting louder. Everybody who said crickets don't like trap music, it's back. Let's get this limiter and crank it so you guys can hear what is going on. So let's see what volume we got here. Alright, cool. I'm going to set another limiter on here quickly. Let's just use a Studio One limiter. So where are we? Studio One. I never use a Studio One limiter, so I'm blind. There it is. So I'll just put the input up and just change this to 0.6. 0.6. Oh, whatever, man. There we go. That'll do. Okay, cool. Actually, it doesn't sound too bad, you know. This limiter is probably a good limiter if you're looking for a standard limiter. Anyway, so that's just for the track so we can hear what's going on here. So the kick, right, so let me just show you without the processing that I've done here. There was some previous processing which I showed in my last video if you paid attention for that one midway through the video. If you want to fast forward to that, you'll see how I made this kick. The kick was originally, it sounded pretty good anyway, so I mean, obviously you want to get a good sounding kick. That's the main basics to making this work. But you know, if you're starting with a good kick, then that's going to make things a whole lot easier. So the kick without processing sounds like this, and just watch the spectral meter. That's why I've got this up here so you guys can see it. So watch what this does, and pay attention to the register down at about 40 Hertz to 60 Hertz, maybe even 80 Hertz, and just look where that red kind of line is, and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about. Okay, so as you can tell, from 40 Hertz it gets a little bit of energy in that line there. Might just pause it if I can, make it slower. Alright, cool. So that's the fast speed, and we'll just slow that down so you guys can see it. It just takes a while for it to come up the screen. It's like watching the B-roll. Alright, So as you can see, there's a lot of energy down here, around about the it's about, yeah, 40, 45, 48, 49 hertz, that kind of area, all the way down to 39 hertz. So I mean, you've got a lot of low end energy, but the most bulk of the heat is up at the 60 to roughly 93. So if you can see that, you know there's a lot of energy around that part of the kick there, and that tells you, well, it tells you a couple of things. It tells you what key the kick is in, and it also tells you where the energy lies within this low end frequency. There are some bits of energy somewhere around the 140, and then also 102, kind of 103, and then some of the top end register up here at 300 hertz. Now, as you can see on the scale here, it tells me what key that is in, so I can tell you this kick is probably in a C or something like that, or C sharp. And looking at that, basically it gives me an indication of where I'm going to hear that in the spectral sound. So for example, you're looking at 20 to 20, basically the spectral there, so 20 hertz to 20k, and you're trying to figure out where you want to position the frequencies so it's effectively going to be heard on other speakers other than just your studio monitors. The most likely chance of it being heard on laptop speakers or a mobile phone or things like that is going to be up in this mid to low frequency here. So this, from about 400 hertz here, is about the mid range. That's kind of where it starts. Maybe a little bit lower, 300 possibly, all the way up to about 600, 800 hertz, that kind of thing. That's kind of where the mid-range frequencies are going to sit. And then you're going to have some real mid to high-end stuff in 1 to 2 to 3K, and even the 4K. And then up from there, it's kind of the air and stuff like that from 16 to 15 to 20, I should say. But there's a lot of intricate detail about mixing stuff like this and learning where the frequency should sit and understanding the key that your frequency's in and things like that. But I don't want to get too much into depth on that in this video. I just want to show you how to get your kick to sound clear in your mix, and how to get that trap style kick that you want to listen to. So first off, processing that I've done on this kick. So as you saw with the meter there, it kind of came out already the way I play it. You can hear the kick quite well. But what I've done here, then, forget the compressor here, because this compressor that I'll show you in a second, I want to show you that at the end, because I actually applied this compressor right at the end, and that's something I did just to get the extra snap out of the kick. That's got not much to do with the actual sound of it. But first off, EQ. So EQ has a lot to do with how the kick's going to stand out within the mix. EQ effectively will help it, remove some of the frequencies you don't need and keep some of the frequencies you do. So as you can see here, I've got a frequency band here at 3729. And that's basically giving me that frequency that's really top end register stuff, where it will stick out. And this is the frequency that you got to be real careful with, because you can boost too much and you can make it harsh. You can boost too little and it won't be enough. If you reduce this frequency a lot, you'll start to lose a lot of the top end of the kick that you would have heard earlier. And it's kind of a special frequency because a lot of things sit around this area, especially within the 1 to 3K. Even 1 to 4. Like, for example, piano could sit in that area, vocals sit in that area. A lot of different instruments will sit in this specific area. So, looking out for that, it's kind of a key spot where a lot of music sits out. And especially if you think back to when AM radio was around, if you guys remember that or not, I do. But AM radio, obviously older people will remember that. But all the kind of music that came through was real light on the bass. There's hardly any bass at all. It was just all that kind of mid to top end frequencies that came through. And the same thing, I guess, applies with some tape. When you look back at tape, the frequencies that used to come through, obviously a lot of the low end was rolled off because tape just didn't record it. And some of the top end stuff was rolled off as well. But that's really high sort of top end stuff. But anyway, this is the EQ that I used to make the move on the kick. So the idea that I had behind it was some of this stuff here. So 60 hertz, I put a bit of a boost there because that's somewhere where the low end stuff resided. And because I was using some of this as a flat, removing some of the 50 hertz below, I wanted to give it back some of the energy that I lost by doing that. So that was kind of an EQ move that I did there. The next thing I did was the 300. So I took a dip out of 300 or 301 at minus 0.6, so a real minimal amount. And then I put another dip at 296, kind of the same kind of thing, but that was at 1.6. And I used a Q of quite wideish for a reduction EQ, but not too wide. But obviously the shelf up here that I've not shelf, the EQ that I've used here is quite wide. So when you're using reductive, you kind of use narrow bands. This is not a rule of thumb, but you use narrow bands as a reductive and wideband Q for using additional EQ. So the next thing I would show you there then is the 90 Hertz, so minus 4.2 at the 90 Hertz area and 90 Hertz, and that was because the 808 was going to sit in that spot, or some of it anyway, and I didn't like the honkiness of, well, it wasn't so much honky, but I didn't like the bass that went down in that area, so I removed it out. And the 3K, so I added some 1.6 dB of additive EQ there. That's the first thing. Next thing was some distortion. So distortion is great if you're looking at adding some harmonics to things and you want to get them to sit higher up in the register of the EQ. So for example, the spectral meter, I should say, if you want to get sitting higher up there, distortion will work really well. So I added some tape distortion there and a fair bit amount of drive and 100% on that, and that creates a bit of harmonics that I didn't have on the kick that helps it stand out. And I'll just actually play it. So if you look at this meter here, you can see there on the tape meter, it shows you where the distortion's been added. So if I just turn this off, it's all clear there. Turn it back on. So you can see there's quite a bit of distortion throughout the entire kick, and that helps to add the clarity to the kick. As you can see here, if I just turn this off, pay attention to the top end section here. There's less energy here, so originally when I had it on, you can see it's a bit brighter here, and now when it's off, it's a little bit darker. So that shows you there's a fair bit more energy added to that kick, and that helped it bring it out more in the mix and made more clarity. And especially on the smaller speakers, that's how you're going to get a bit more clarity. The next thing here was a bit of compression, which is more than less just leveling the kick out. So I'll put that on. Hardly any reduction there, but you can see that because of the way that this is affecting, so the curve or the knee on the compressor is on a hard setting, so it doesn't hit it very much at all. As you can see, there's no reduction here, but it creates, because of the slope, it's not a hugely like sharp slope. So if you're going to put a soft slope there, you could see that the knee changes on this, so it would definitely hit the compressor a bit. As you can see, it's getting a bit of reduction there. And it depends on the kind of sound that you're looking for. So if you put a hard knee on here, it's more or less not so much limiting it, but it is to a fact. It's limiting the sound a little bit, but it's not hitting the compressor at really much at all, if any. But if I have a soft knee, it is. So I just put a hard knee on there, just created that sound that I was after, and like I said, there's hardly anything movement wise on that. And I got settings here of 10 milliseconds attack and 100 milliseconds release. That's not really specific to the BPM of the track, but kind of near enough. So that's the first thing I did. So that was to get the kick up in the register there, up on the higher frequencies there, and some of the mid to low stuff there that you would get in 200, 300 hertz, 500 hertz, that kind of thing. Puts it further up in the register. The next thing was the compressor here. So the fantastic thing about this in Studio One, you can just hit this little thing here and it'll bring up a little compressor thing here. And if I play the signal now and turn this on, you can see how that's affecting the knee right there. And it gives you a little reduction meter here. I love that. I think that's so cool. It's so cute. It's like a little tiny thing. I might make that bigger so you can see it. little meter. Anyway, so this is the meter here. Now the cool thing about this compressor in Studio One is it's actually such a great sounding compressor. I like it a lot. But the thing is, you've got to look at this knee here, and you can adjust that how you want it to sound to taste, obviously, and how it affects your signal as well will be dependent on the knee there. So I adjusted the knee so it was quite a slope that was kind of calmish, but not too steep, but just enough to give me that sound that I wanted. And I gave it 3:1 ratio, and the inputs obviously is 0. So I've got this auto attack and release, so that sounded right for me in that sense. And I haven't put any makeup gain to make up any gain, because I wanted to actually control the level of the kick. I didn't want to increase the volume. I just wanted to reduce some of the volume because it was needing to be controlled. So play that without. And play it with. Without. With. Okay, so as you can hear, I lost a tiny bit of volume by 0.8, and that's not a bad thing when I'm trying to control the kick. I mean, I could do a makeup and increase the volume back up to that by the same amount that I just lost, but I decided that I wouldn't do that in this situation. I left it how it was. So that's just a technique I used there to reduce some of the volume but control the transient and stuff like that, and shape the transient of the kick. The next thing was this VC compressor, which is basically an emulation, well, somewhat of an emulation of that style compressor, so the 160, which is quite an interesting compressor if you're looking at it. Actually, I'll just show you if I can just find what the original one looks like. Okay, so alright, so here we are with the DBX 160. That's basically what that's emulating right there. So you can see this is the old DBX 160, and I'll just show you the one that I'm using. So this is the, well, Native Instruments. It's made by Softtube, but it's the Native Instruments version they made, and they included in the complete pack that they make. So I really like the sound of this compressor, and I like the fact that it's kind of a bit bigger than this little tiny thing that you get in UAD. I don't actually have this one. As you can see, it's got Start Demo on there, and I haven't bought it because I just haven't needed to yet. And this compressor actually has a wet dry version, so you can actually blend parallel compression using this one, and this one doesn't. So I guess, I mean, within Studio One you can do parallel compression quite easy, so if you needed to do that you could do it. But anyway, that's the compressor there. It's replicating the DBX 160. So let me just close that off. Let's play it with it out, and then we'll play it with, so you guys can hear the difference. I'll just move it down here so it doesn't get in the way. So I'll move it here, this will do. Alright, let's play it without. With. Without. With. Alright, how crazy is that? I mean, it really makes the transient sharp and stick out. And if I was to show you you know, like a printed out version of that, you could tell what the differences were. But look how much spectral, now look how much is in the spectral meter there. You can see there's a lot of that mid-range frequency there that will stick out on smaller speakers, and some of the top end, well, not top end, but top to mid, the mid-top sort of area there, 800 hertz. And it even comes up further up here, but it just sort of phases out. But I mean, that shows you right there, that's got a lot of energy there, and it really makes that stick out. So you've got a C note there, which is pretty much all the way from A to C there, and then a C and an A. So all the way there, you've got some information that really shows and shines on the smaller speaker. And this is kind of what you're looking at doing, especially with a kick, if you're trying to make it stick out further in the mix. You really want to get it to a point where it's helping it show further on the spectral meter. Just give me a second there. So as I was saying, yes, I mean, it sticks out there, and that's kind of how you work it. And then if you play it with the bass together, without the bass, alright, so I mean, like you can see here, how much energy the bass has now when it's down in the low end frequency, even though I removed a lot of the bass out, and I've done a little trick with the low air on the actual 808 to get some of that real low end bass there. I want to show you another video of that, another tutorial, but I just want to show you this kick first. So as you can see in this meter, it shows you a lot of information. If you just load this meter up, it's free in Studio One. Obviously, if you have Studio One, you can have this meter, well then the professional model version of it anyway. And you can see exactly what's going on with this meter. If it helps you to see it in color, that's kind of the way to view it in essence. And also you can use it in a, like this version here, so you can see the octaves. Maybe not that. I usually use the FET version. It shows me a lot of energy there as well, and you can change the range there, so you can see the range of where it's, where it's going to show you most energy. But in essence, this is how you can get a kick to stand out in your mix, and how it can, break through the mix. There's other things that obviously you would use, which is parallel compression, that helps it get through, because obviously the energy of the low end 808 would have reduced the volume of my kick, and there would have been masking happening with those two instruments together. But for the most part, parallel compression, use a bit of distortion to get your kick to sit further up in the mix, and use some plugins like this where a compressor that'll help bring out the kick. This particular compressor is known for doing that with certain things like drums. It's able to bring out the snap of the kick and create a nice sounding transient. You can use transient designers as well, but I mean, you didn't see a whole lot of processing on this. There was some other processing prior to it coming into Studio One, but for the most part, it's using things like this technique, using an exciter with a bit of distortion. If you're using Studio One, you've got the professional version. You can get a plugin from Softtube, which is the saturated dial here, and you can dial in some distortion like that. That's one way of doing it. Otherwise, you could use the Red Light District, which is part of the plugins that come with Studio One as well. So Red Light District is down here, wherever it is. No, not Reverb. Man, I'm pressing anything that says R on it. Anyway, you guys know where it's at. So Red Light District, there it is there. So Red Light District, another way to get distortion. The cool thing about this is you can actually set the mix, so you can do parallel Red Light District versus not Red Light District. That'll help you get the right mix that you want. There's all those plugins that you have within Studio One. You don't have to have the ones that I use. I mean, that's just something that I'm using. But like I said, there's these stock plugins, so just mess around with that. Get your kick, try and design it how you want it to sound, and then keep using that kick. If it sits right, save the kick, use it every time you want to have it on a track, and you'll be happy that you did. So, I mean, rather than going out and buying every other plug-in or kick that you can find out in the store, you can design your own kicks if you want to be original, and you can make that and make them sound how you want them to sound. And just a little bit of things like this will help you understand how it works. I might do a more in-depth tutorial exactly on how I did this kick, but for the most part I showed you how it was done. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and otherwise remember to like and subscribe, and peace.